Not sure you're.
Oh, mine's not there.
Testing.
Might just be mine.
It's weak.
Yeah.
Maybe a volume thing is all it is.
Test. Yeah.
Yeah, it was working.
Was it? This one's working? Okay. My bad, sorry.
Just testing you, Nance.
Okay.
Okay.
Roll call.
Okay, yes, Mr. Secretary,
Marcy Grail,
present.
Ken Howe,
Here.
Jordan Truitt,
Right here.
Cindy Condon,
Here.
Ann Byer,
Here.
Richard Devlin. Here. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I have the following announcements. For agenda item F, public comment period, there are 3 ways to let us know you are interested in providing comments to the council. For those in person, please fill out a registration card available on the table and submit to Sarah Esterson. For those using the WebEx, you will need to use the raise your hand feature. For those on the phone only, you will need to press *3, which will alert us that you want to speak. We will go over these again during agenda item F. For council members and anyone addressing the council, please remember to state your name clearly and please do not use the speakerphone feature as it will create feedback. Please mute your phones, and if you are joining us by phone and receive a phone call, please hang up from this call and dial back in after finishing your other call. For those signed onto the webinar, please do not broadcast your webcam. If you want to receive future email notifications of council meetings, project milestones, or rulemakings through our Click Dimensions program, you can do so by clicking on the link in the agenda or on the council webpage. Look for the green box on the right-hand side of the page that says sign up for emails updates. You may also sign up today on the computer near the entrance to the room. You are also welcome to access the online project mapping tool and any documents by visiting our website. Please note that the audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and may be posted to the council's website following the meeting. Energy Facility Siting Council meetings shall be conducted in a respectful and courteous manner where everyone is allowed to state their positions at the appropriate times consistent with council rules and procedures. Willful, accusatory, offensive, insulting, threatening, insolent, or slanderous comments which disrupt the council meeting are not acceptable. Pursuant to Oregon Administrative Rule 345-011-0080, any person who engages in unacceptable conduct which disrupts the council meeting may be expelled. We are now ready to move on to agenda item F, which is the public comment period. This time is reserved for the public to address the council regarding any item within council jurisdiction that is not otherwise closed for comment. Applications for site certificates which are closed for comment include the Nolan Hills Wind Power Project and Boardman Hemingway Transmission Line Amendment Number 1. Do we have anyone wishing to make comments? We're going to ask Nancy if there's anyone on the phone wishing to make comments. We will give this a moment. If anyone is interested in making comments, please make yourself known. As this is the first agenda item, we're going to allow a moment. Sometimes the whole logging in is a bit challenging. Again, this is the public comment period. If you would wish to make a comment, please make yourself known. Okay, well, I am not going to use the gavel and indicate that the public comment period is closed, but please note that at 8:36, we have closed the public comment period. Our next agenda item G, is the Nolan Hills Wind Power Project proposed order review, proposed contested case order review, exceptions hearing, possible material change hearing, and public notice of possible hearing to adopt the final order. Kate Sloan, the Oregon Department of Energy Senior Siting Analyst, and Aaliyah Miles, Oregon Department of Justice Senior Assistant Attorney General, Natural Resources Section, will be the General Counsel of the General Counsel Division, are going to present. Kate, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Council. For the record, my name is Kathleen Sloan. I'm a senior siting analyst with the Oregon Department of Energy. And as mentioned, we're here today to go over the Nolan Hills project. And I just wanted to start with the slide that shows Council the materials that have been provided to date. Just as a refresher, the council reviewed the draft proposed order in May and June of last year. We issued a proposed order in August of last year, August 4th. And when we issued the public notice, we also issued the public notice on contested case. And a contested case was requested by Umatilla County, and it will be covered in another part of this agenda item by both Patrick and Aaliyah Miles from DOJ. So I just want to make sure that in council's packet and in their previous receipt of materials, you've received the proposed order, the proposed contested case order that was issued in May, the exceptions filed by Umatilla County, and then also the responses to exceptions. And we're going to go through all of that today. Next slide. Okay, so this is just another overview of the agenda item. For today, I'm going to be presenting on agenda item 1A and 1B, which is the actual proposed order review, accepting the contested case proceedings that will happen in between. Council will initiate review of the proposed order on the application for site certificate, excluding the issues evaluated in the contested case proceeding. This will include a straw poll to preliminarily determine whether to affirm, reject, or modify staff's recommended finding of facts, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval from the proposed order. Council will then review the proposed contested case order and hold an exceptions hearing. Aaliyah Miles, Senior Assistant Attorney General with DOJ, Department of Justice, will be the legal counsel to EFSC since Patrick Rowe is acting legal counsel to Odo, who is party to the contested case. There will also be straw polls after each grouping in the exceptions hearing. I will then resume council's review of the proposed order in agenda item 1B. If based on the straw polls on the proposed order and the proposed contested case order, there are any material changes, council will then hold a material change hearing, which could occur today or at a future meeting. If based on items 1 through 4 on the slide, council is ready to make a final decision on the application, you may do so, and that decision may also occur at a future meeting if you so decide. Next slide. So I'm going to launch into my overview of the proposed order review. Next slide. A little bit of this is just going to be a refresher for council since it has been over a year since you reviewed the project, just to get you familiar. So the Nolan Hills Wind Project is proposed by the applicant, which is Nolan Hills Wind LLC, which is a subsidiary of Capital Power Corporation. It's a proposed solar and wind facility within a 48,000 plus acre site boundary, and it's located nearby, near the town of Nolan, here in northwestern Umatilla County. Next slide. It's just another slide that shows the micrositing corridor. I think what's of note here is if you look at the large purple patch, that is the proposed approximately 1,896 acres. That would be the solar component, the solar array. And it was the subject of a goal 3 exception in the draft proposed order, The facility will also include up to 112 wind turbines and 2 potential options for transmission line, which is kind of hard to see, but one goes off to the west and then one goes a little bit north. And one would connect to the UEC, Umatilla Electric Co-op, I believe is what that stands for, Cottonwood Transmission Line. And the other one would be an option to connect to a 5-mile BPA transmission line near the Stanfield line. Next slide. So just to review where we've been, what we've covered, and kind of where we're at, we're kind of in this hybrid area between the contested case and the final order. Like I said, we issued the proposed order in August of 2022. Contested case was requested by Umatilla County. We've had contested case proceedings that have been ongoing, pretty much wrapped up this past month. And we're here today to cover both the proposed contested case order, the exceptions hearing, and then council can consider whether or not to move forward and adopt the final order. Next slide. So I know it's a little hard to read, but it is a summary of the procedural history on the site certificate. The complete site certificate was submitted, was deemed complete January 31st of 2022. We issued the draft proposed order in April of last year. Council started its review in May of last year. It was held open. The record was held open at the applicant's request to June 24th of last year, where they were able to provide additional information in response to comments received on the record of the DPO. And then we issued the proposed order and notice of contested case August 4th. And on August 22nd, Umatilla County requested standing in the contested case. And as I had mentioned, it's been in a contested case proceeding since then. In May, the proposed contested case order was issued. In June, exceptions were filed. In June, responses to exceptions were filed. And now we are here to review all of the above and also a possible final decision. Next slide. So the focus of the review today is really to cover what we would call substantive changes made in the proposed order from what council reviewed in the draft proposed order. Following council's meeting to review the draft proposed order, the department must issue a proposed order in accordance with ORS 469370 subpart 4, taking into account consideration the comments of the council, the public made at any public meeting or public hearing, written comments received before the close of the record of the public hearing, and agency consultation. In the proposed order, the department must recommend either granting a site certificate with conditions or denying a site certificate for the facility. And as you know, we recommended that council approve the site certificate. Next slide. So the list here is a list of standards that, based upon our review of the proposed order and then changes made from the draft proposed order, there were no substantive changes made based on comments received under any of these standards listed on the slide. That is not to preclude council from having questions or wanting to cover any of these standards. It's just that they're not the focus of my presentation today. There were two standards that we made what would be considered substantive changes. One is organizational expertise, which will be my next topic of discussion. The other one is under the land use standard, which is where the issues in the contested case proceeding fell. So that will get covered by Aaliyah and after I'm done with my presentation part on the proposed order. But I just want to be clear with council that you have the ability to ask about any of these standards as I go through my review. Next slide. So at the DPO hearing, Councilmember Condon raised some concerns about the organizational expertise standard and our reliance on information provided by the applicant that would indicate that they were relying heavily on the expertise of their parent company, Capital Power, for both the financial assurance and also the expertise. During the June 24th review of the draft proposed order, the applicant provided additional information, including a parent company letter that stated very clearly that they stand behind the project. It's also an attachment to of the proposed order. As noticed, these, oops, I'm on the wrong page. I gotta read my notes. So at the DPO hearing, the applicant had asked to hold the record open to submit this information, which is why we continued the hearing until June. Next slide. I think, yeah. And in that letter that was submitted by the applicant, we were able as a department to make additional findings of fact in the proposed order. And we felt that these addressed some of the concerns and the comments raised by councils on the record of the DPO when they did their review. It's important to note that Capital Power, has been in operation since 1896. They have an investment rating under the Standard & Poor S&P. They own 15 operational wind and solar energy projects in North America, 8 in the US and 7 in Canada. Capital Power is the parent company and would fund the construction, operation, and retirement of the facility. And in the letter signed by the Senior Vice President and Chief Legal Development and Commercial Officer of Capital Power, it stated that Capital Power stands behind the project and is committed to providing financial assurance as outlined in Exhibit M of the application and the human capital and expertise outlined in Exhibit D. It also affirmed that Capital Power has the financial wherewithal and expertise to develop, construct, own, and operate the project. Next slide. So based upon these additional findings of fact, we made revisions to the recommended organizational expertise condition 1. And we basically proposed a new condition. So prior to construction, the certificate holder shall submit to the department a guarantee signed by its parent company, guaranteeing payment and performance of the certificate holder's obligations under the site certificate using the form that was provided by the department and provided in the final order on the ASC attachment F or substantially similar to that in the final order attachment F if approved by the department in consultation with our legal counsel at Oregon DOJ. So that was the change that we made based upon the additional information that was provided under organizational expertise. There were no other substantive changes under this standard. I don't know if council has any questions at this point. Next slide.
Thank you, Cindy Condon for the record. I am wondering, and I may have missed it, but do we have Form F? Do we have the form?
I believe it was an attachment in the proposed order.
Okay. And I didn't find it. And so maybe at
Okay.
a break or whatnot, you can point it out. I think it's important that we see it
Yeah,
if we're considering it here.
okay,
Thank you.
okay. We will try to
Thank you.
locate that form for you. See if I can. Is that something I should pull up now? No? Okay. So should I move on to the straw poll? Okay.
For the record, Todd Cornett, just trying to address your question, Councilmember Condon. Would you like to see that now, or you're just want to make sure it's in there?
Just want to make sure it's in there.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I think generally the straw poll, I think these changes are quite good. And it's just that I'd like to see the form and think we should all see it. Yes, it doesn't have to be before the straw poll.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right. So at this point in the presentation, council can have a straw poll on whether to agree with the findings of facts, conclusions of law, and the conditions of approval in the proposed order for this standard, for the organizational expertise standard, or to indicate any specific changes in findings of fact, conclusions of law, or conditions of approval under this organizational expertise standard and the changes in the proposed order.
So, Madam Chair, just to kind of go over this again, the way the structure works, is throughout this Kate's presentation here, later on through the exceptions, we'll go through a series of straw polls that, will allow us to determine, if you want to, if you're going to agree with, the information in the proposed order, the information in the proposed contested case order, or if you want to make any changes to those. That'll just help us determine if a material change hearing is needed later on. So that's the purpose of going through the straw poll. So essentially, as Kate said, with regards to just the organizational expertise standard, the question is, are you, functionally fine with what's in the proposed order? Are there any changes that you would like to see made in the findings or the condition? Or do you not agree with, that at all? As Kate had mentioned, we're not going to cover any of the other standards. We'll come back to land use, after the contested case kind of exceptions portion. But this is the only one right now that we have teed up for you to evaluate. I wanted to be very clear, as Kate was, that if there's any other standards that you're interested in, we can cover those. We can take straw polls on those. But effectively, this is really the only one that we're bringing up to you right now.
Thank you, Secretary Cornett. So council members, first, I would ask, does anyone have any need to address any of the other standards? Okay, so we don't need that. And so at this time, I'd ask if anyone has any comments about what's been presented at this time. Councilmember Condon.
Thank you. Just back to the additional findings of fact in the fourth bullet point, which I just lost my screen here, but on the fourth bullet point that you read,
Okay.
I'd just like to reconsider the use of would as opposed to will. And I have addressed that before. We've talked about it before. And it's that the reason is I believe that would is more conditional as opposed to will, which is certainty. And if the site certificate is issued, but I could be wrong about that.
wanna
Thank
weigh
you
in
for
on
that comment.
Rick?
I don't want to weigh in on it. I want to pull it up on the screen.
Okay. Can you go back, Nancy? Go back one more slide. Yeah. So if you go down, it says the parent company to the LLC, the entity that would fund the construction, operation, and retirement of the proposed facility. That's the one you're, okay.
It's for council to discuss. If he has any concerns, they would want to.
So Councilmember Condon has raised her question, so I would ask first, is there any comments on that question? And then this is that moment where I'm looking at Patrick Aaliyah. I believe this is a Patrick question at this time. And